Good morning. I'm going to call the session of the Boardroom Revision to order. I'd like to begin by acknowledging that we are in Treaty 1 territory and the traditional homeland of the Métis Nation. With me is Robert Falloux. Farthest to my left, right to my left is Carrie Linkletter, and my name is Harvey Diamond. The city is represented by Lindsay Warham, and our assistant is Huda Aziz. We'll be hearing application for revision of the assessment rules in accordance with the Municipal Assessment Act. The matters for which revision have been requested described in each application. We will limit discussion to those matters. The subjects and the applicants or the assessor must have sworn testimony at this hearing, and all matters must be sworn in. Be advised that comparative assessments are not considered as evidence by our board. Our board is appointed annually by council of it and the city administration. We make our decisions on the basis of the evidence that we hear, and that alone, and we mail orders written orders as soon as possible after the hearing. Please note that our decisions with respect to the application may be appealed to the Manitoba Municipal Assessment Board if the matter pertains to assessment value or classification, or to the Court of Queen's Bench if the matter pertains to an application for exemption from taxation. And should a party wish to appeal, the manner in which to do so will be included with our order. With respect to the hearing process, I will confirm the matter to be addressed to each applicant following their swearing in. We will then have the assessor's testimony followed by any questions that may be had by the applicant. After that, the applicant may provide their testimony, followed by questions, and each party will be given an opportunity to summarize if they wish to do so. Once all the evidence of an application has been brought forward, the applicant may leave. The process will repeat for every matter on the docket today. The session will close after all applications have been heard, and we will deliberate in private, and we will receive written orders by written mail as soon as possible. The information today will be recorded and live streamed to form part of a public record. Will you swear in the parties?
Yes.
Thank you.
Please state your full name.
Lindsay Lightware.
And do you swear the evidence you're about to present is the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth, so help you God?
Yes, I do.
Thank you. Bible or? Please state your full name.
Jeff Badger.
And do you swear the evidence you're about to present is the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth, so help you God?
I do.
Thank you. You may be seated.
Yes,
May I say something quickly to Mr. Badger?
you may.
Is that Pioneer? I know there's another one there, Why, I'm not really worried about Pioneer, I'm gonna drop it.
Oh, okay. Then never mind.
Yeah.
Sorry, mine. I marked something off on your guys' briefs, but he didn't know that I had done that, and I wanted to mention it to him before we got started.
Okay, well, first item on the agenda, number one, is unnumbered lot on Pioneer. You proceed with that when you're ready?
All right?
Oh, but we're, there's no reason to go through, we're dropping, we phoned and told
That's being withdrawn?
yeah, it's been withdrawn.
You have to sign a withdrawal form, which I will get for you, but that's, in the meantime, we can withdraw it, but formally you'll have to sign a withdrawal form.
Okay,
Okay, we'll do that after though. We'll proceed with item number two then.
we're just trying to save everybody time, that's all.
Yeah, that's fine.
Pioneer, right? Yeah.
Good. Okay. Okay, item number two then is 212 Bannatyne Avenue. Ms. Warren, when you're ready, you can proceed with that.
Yes, just one more, Mr. Chairman. I'll get
As
this
much time
going.
as you need, Ms. Warren.
Pardon?
As much time as you need.
Perfect, thank you so much. So the property we're looking at right now is file number 19-4208. The roll number is 13060840000, and the address is 212 Bannatyne Avenue. This is a service parking lot, but before we get started, I just wanted to explain that this is the 2020 general reassessment, and the City of Winnipeg, every reassessment does a fresh look at all of the properties. We look at data from the reference date of April 1st, 2018. We look at income and expense information, we look at sale information, we look at outside source information, just to make sure that we're doing a new reassessment every cycle of all of our property types. So with respect to this parking lot, It's a surface parking lot, and it's located on the south side of Bannatyne Avenue between Main Street and Albert Street. It has no plugs, and it has 20 parking stalls. The land area is 7,706 square feet, and I'm requesting, Mr. Chairman, that the burden of proof be placed on the applicant for non-cooperation as per section 53(3)(b) of the Municipal Assessment Act, and if a reduction in assessment is ordered, that it follows section 54(3.2) of the Municipal Assessment Act. And if you turn to page 9 of my brief, we have a letter that we sent to Mr. Badger on May 4th, 2018, indicating that they had an extension to return the 2017 income and expense mailer till May 31st, 2018. And if you turn to page 11, you'll see the email that our department sent Mr. Badger, indicating that he was getting an extension till the 31st. And then on page 12, you'll see a letter that was sent from Mr. Badger asking for an extension on the properties. And if you look at the list of properties that was requesting an extension for, 212 Bannatyne Avenue is the first one on the list. So it's the department's position that Mr. Badger did receive this mailer, and it was not returned to our department. So we are requesting that the burden of proof be placed on the applicant and the reversal of onus be placed, because we have evidence to show that they did receive the mailer and they have not sent it in to us at this point.
That's fine. Mr. Badger, your position on that?
I'm opposing it.
Why, I know, but you have to oppose it with rationale of why.
Number one is because they assessed the property based on the land value, not the income value. So the income value information was irrelevant. Secondly, this file has been up in front of the assessment department for about, I've been involved the last 3 or 4 cycles. I've brought forth information on the property, legal information on the property in regards to easements, et cetera, that affect the value of the property. The assessment department has failed to ever acknowledge any of those. Well, we've been awarded reductions based on that information, but the assessment department does not, they never added to their file on this particular property, so if they're going to assess it on the income approach it, they can make the appropriate changes to it. So if they're not doing their job, I mean, it's irrelevant. I put the information and they're just gonna spit out some sort of number based on a
Okay.
model that's not.
That's your
particular.
total position, is that correct?
Yes, yes.
Okay, there might be some questions. First of all, I guess I should have asked you if you had any questions to ask Ms. Wareham before I asked you to speak. And if you have them, I'll let you ask them now. I should have asked you before, I'm sorry.
The original assessed value, what was that based on?
Mr. Badger, the original assessed value has no bearing on the conversation that we're trying to have. The
Sure,
conversation,
it's your methodology that you're using.
Mr. Chairman, the conversation that we're trying to have is, we request information
I
in
understand.
2018
There might be
2017.
questions on that basis, and you can ask that type of a question if you deny having received it or there's any clarification there.
I'm not.
Your argument is another thing, but asking questions is not part of your argument right now.
Well, my
It's just
argument
trying
is
to
that
clarify the city's position on why they're seeking.
The property was
Non-cooperation.
assessed on the land value, not on the
Okay.
income value.
Yeah, and that's your argument, that's fine, we can go, and we'll consider that, okay, when we consider this. Do you have any questions, though, regarding your serving or your knowledge of the city's request for information?
No questions now.
Okay. Any members of the panel have any questions?
No questions.
No questions.
I don't either. Okay, now, Ms. Wareham, do you have any questions of Mr. Badger, having said his position on why he opposes the city's application?
So, Mr. Badger, you would agree that you just refused to hand in the mailer based on an anticipation of how the city would assess the property? Because at the time the mailers were sent out, we didn't know what our 2020 general reassessment information would be. We were at the point of gathering information, so are you saying that you refused to hand it in?
No, I didn't say I refused, it just wasn't handed in.
Okay. Those are my questions, Mr. Chairman.
Okay, anybody else have any questions of?
No.
Ms. Badger?
Can I make one more comment?
Well, you've already made your comments, we're asking questions right now. I'll let you make an argument after,
Okay.
okay? Again, it just as further, if you have a rebuttal or anything. I have a question. If in fact you didn't think that this information is pertinent, why did you send your letter that's dated May 3rd saying you need a further extension?
I was, I never got the information from the client. He failed to provide it to me, so I didn't provide it.
Okay, so that might be the reason why you didn't provide it, but that isn't the rationale by, so you did obviously see, by sending your letter of May 3rd, that the information was not only pertinent, but was required to be provided to the city.
Yes.
Okay. I think that if you want to make a final argument on the basis of just this alone, I'll let you do so, and I'll let Ms. Wareham respond to it. If I have any further questions.
I just want to give you one example, in the last reassessment cycle. If you go back to her Exhibit 12, there's a property there that's listed as 270 Morley Avenue. That's an apartment building.
What page are
Oh, I'm
you
sorry, let me just go down. 264 Wellington Crescent. That's an apartment building. Okay.
Okay.
That was, we were granted an exemption from this penalty that they're trying to impose right now because the assessment department assessed it based on the land value, not on the income
Well,
value.
that's something for us to.
I'm just saying, I mean, there's a perfect example.
Yeah, it's not necessarily a precedent that we'll, you know,
Precedent, yes.
it's not necessarily a precedent that we feel binding is upon us, we'll have to deal with it. Any response, Ms. Will?
I just have some statements to make, not really any questions in response to the statements.
Well, I'm
that-
saying you now need to do
Oh.
that.
I think the position and the thing that the city wants to put forward is, we request income and expense information,
We're aware of that.
not for particular individual properties, but to develop our model
No,
across the
we're aware
city
of
as a
that.
whole. And it's not dependent on what ends up being assessed, whether it's land. If we have sent you a request for information, we expect that it be returned, and the legislation indicates so.
Okay, we'll have to consider this. Before doing so, if any of my panel members have any questions they want to ask anybody, I'll let them do so. I don't have any.
No
Okay.
questions.
Okay, we'll just maybe leave for a second. We can do so, there's, wait for the cameras. Okay, I can advise that we made a decision to grant the city their application. So, Mr. Badger, you have to go first. And if you want to shift to you to,
That's right, I forgot about that part of it. Maybe, the only, my argument would be based on the income approach. There's only two areas that I have a difference of opinion with the assessment department's workup of the application. One is the capitalization rate. I'm suggesting, recommending that it should be slightly higher. And then the other thing I'm talking about is the number of parking stalls. So I'll get into my brief, but those are the only two things. You turn to, I guess, my summary, which is the third page. I apologize, I didn't, looks like I didn't number it. I just want to run through it very quickly there. The site area is 69.5 square foot frontage and 110 square feet in depth. I'm talking about this page here, there's something here, yeah. What I want to know, you look down to title. It's a freehold title, but there's two caveats with right-of-ways on the property that give favor to the two adjacent buildings. If you take a look at the back end, the very last page, there's a diagram. Look at Appendix 3. The title of it is Land-Based Aerial Map. There's the parking lot. The dotted line is those portions of the land that are affected by this easement, are right-of-way. It's given an easement for the building on Main Street, which is to the bottom, so they can load, unload. It's a hotel, and it also provides their second means of exiting the building for fire. At the end, to the left side, there's a long adjacent building there. They also have a loading zone and an exit there. So the dotted lines I've indicated are those areas of the landmass that are affected by this easement. The solid line, I'll just talk into it, the property is in what they call a character zone. That's also in the historic exchange district. It imposes a variety of different restrictions on future development of the property. One would be the building to the left has windows, so there'd have to be a fire separation between any new buildings and that building there. So if you look at the solid lines, that would be the line that you'd be restricted for development. You wouldn't be able to develop within that the 8 feet and the 5 foot setbacks there, you know, from the property. Plus you wouldn't be able to have windows, et cetera. And also the building would be restricted to push back from the front street by 5 feet. So if you were to develop this property, you'd have to honor the easements or buy them outright from the buildings, but I think that would be impossible because, again, they have windows facing into the easement, and plus they have all their exiting for the building. So you couldn't disrupt their use of their own existing properties in any future development. I made a mistake, the valuation year should be 2018. I just want to go on the bottom down here, you'll see, that's just the past,
So were you referring to it now, Mr. Badger?
I'm going back to the summary page.
Okay.
These are the valuations in the property. The assessed values of these, since I've been there, and we've been arguing a reduction based on some of the points I'm talking about there. In 2014 it was 285, 2016 it was 385, then in 2018 it jumped to $782,000. It was reduced to $497,000. If you look at the new assessment right now, the 2020, it's $644,000, which is a 30% increase in the value of the property since the last cycle. I'm going to be doing my workup, and my recommendation on income approach would be $471,000. That's going to be my recommendation. If you just flip to the next page, just want to give a bit of a description. The third paragraph, I just want to note that the property is encumbered by those 2 easements I was talking about. The land area that it affects, it basically affects about 25% of the land mass of this site for future development potential. Plus, it does cause a restriction in the number of stalls. And assessing the property has to be the legal use of the property. Right now, if the property had no easements, didn't have to worry about the neighbors, we can park more than the 20 stalls that the assessor is using. But right now, if I have to abide by the accident requirements and the easements, we only have 19 stalls. Oh, I'm sorry, I'd like to just pass this out if you can see if she's okay with it. It's just a blow up. We have pictures of it, but just a very clear blow up of the exiting doors and the loading zones of those 2 adjacent properties. There are cars parked there, but those cars, they shouldn't be parking there, number one, but it's the people who have those easements, they're parking their cars in their loading zones there. You'll see it affects 2 stalls,
Who's getting the revenue?
and not the owner. Because it's not supposed, the hotel guy, that's basically who's been parking there. Okay, so I put forth that the actual number is 19. I mentioned already about the zoning. Maybe what I'd like to do is, this is flip to the, I think by accident I may have included the memo there, I see in my submission, but go to exhibit 1, which I think is the 3rd last page. Just the workup of the income value of the property. I got the assessors to the left-hand side, and I got the applicant myself on the right-hand side. So I mentioned the differences then. The number of stalls, assessor has 20. I'm telling you that from a legal point of view, we have 19, and we're earning revenue at 19 stalls. The net income then, I agree with the assessor's revenue per stall. So the income assessment department has 24,840. If I take out that one stall, I'd have 23,598. Capitalization rate, the assessment department is using a one rate for the downtown zone, 4.5%, without any regard to site-specific information. And the site-specific information I'm talking about, if someone was to buy this as a income-producing property, he has to take into account that one day down the road he wants to convert it to something else. There's easements and the area zoning that affect its potential, so they would want to have a higher capitalization rate because of such risk. The parking lot as it stands now is non-conforming, in that if they had to redevelop and get a new permit for it, they'd have to have setbacks in that from the city, and the city right now would not allow a standalone parking lot unless it's tied into another building around the complex there. But it's grandfathered right now, so they can use it, but the potential for any other sort of redevelopment is limited. Based on that, I'm suggesting that this property should have a capitalization rate of 5% rather than 4.5%. This argument has been used the last couple cycles, and I believe part of the reduction has always been related to the increase in the capitalization rate. So this comes up with, my recommendation is the value is 471, 960. In the assessment department, because they flipped from land to income approach, her brief, you'll notice that she's suggesting the income value will be 552,000. So the difference then, just summarizing, is the difference in the capitalization rate and the reduction of the number of stalls. I don't know if in terms of, I know there's been some concerns about the land value based on this 471. If you look at that land value per square foot, it might seem low in comparison to other properties and land transactions. So 61 is low, but if you look at the net area that you can develop in the property, because you can't develop the easement for the adjacent properties, the land value then on usable property here would be $82 a square foot, which is in the realm of downtown properties. I did do a workup on the a comparative approach, but because the assessment's flipped to an income approach, I believe we should just rely on the income approach, go along with the income approach. So then in summary, then my argument is that the assessment should be dropped into $471,000.
Any questions, Ms. Wareham?
I do, thank you, Mr. Chairman. Mr. Badger, we're going to start off looking at your land sales that you've spoken to. You've come up with an assumption of $71.76 a square foot. Is that correct? Is that what I'm reading on your Exhibit 2?
Yes.
Would you agree that these properties are in significantly inferior locations to the subject property, 50 Gary being on the corner of Gary and Assiniboine? 219 Main Street is accessed only via a back alley and is a gravel lot that has no street access. So would you not agree that some of these sales you've presented have a significantly inferior location?
I would disagree with 219 Main Street, your comment there, because it does have city-owned property behind it, which could be converted to a public lane. It's just they haven't opened up the street. The Gary Street's at the bottom of Gary Street, right across from probably one of the most busiest places to find a parking stalls, because it's tied into the city's Fort Gary Place commercial development, plus all the housing around there that doesn't have parking. And it's also a corner lot, which I think is superior without easement, so I think it's a good example.
Does 50 Gary have access from both streets?
Yes, and back lane.
I'm gonna have to disagree. 50 Gary does not have access from Gary Street. It only has access via Assiniboine. My next question, you showed this picture of the stalls here. When you inspected the parking lot, when was this picture taken?
Yesterday.
Yesterday? Did you count all the stalls when you were in the parking lot?
Yes.
And how many total stalls did you count, including this one in your picture?
sorry, I got my book here, so. It was 21, because what I did, I subtracted 2 of those cars that were interfering in the picture from the unit count, car count.
So you've counted 21
So I
stalls?
I'm saying that 2 of those cars shouldn't be parking there, because they're within the easement area.
Now, would you agree that when you counted the stalls along the building, there were bumpers as well as yellow lines indicating where the stalls were? Would you agree with that statement?
I can't remember seeing the signs on the thing.
There aren't signs, but there are bumpers along that building, and then painted on the building are yellow lines so that the cars know where to pull in and where their stalls are. Now, would you agree that this yellow line right here indicates that that's the end of the last stall? In your picture that you've shown, there's a yellow line there.
It's on the building.
Mhm.
I'll look at the
And-
aerial.
So I'm asking Mr. Badger, when you inspected the property, did you happen to notice all of the yellow lines for every single parking
No,
stall along
I
that
did not,
building?
but I counted the number of cars yesterday and subtracted 2,
Okay,
and the lot was full.
okay. So you're accepting our value for the income and disagreeing with the cap rate on the stall count, correct?
Yes.
Okay. Now, you spoke a number of times in your presentation about the reduction last cycle. Are you aware what that reduction was based on?
No, because I didn't get anything back. And I got correct when I did mention it. My belief is that it's partially because of the stall count and this capitalization rate.
Were you aware that it was reduced based on my recommendation
Yes.
to the value that I recommended the value be reduced to? Okay. Those are my questions, Mr. Chairman, thank you.
Thank you. Mr. Fluke, do you have any questions of the applicant?
Yes, I do.
Go ahead and ask them, please.
In your presentation, your statement, you showed the years of 2014, 16, 18, 20.
Yes,
Were you here representing
yes.
the appellant? And during that period of time, did you state that it was 19 or?
Yes.
Or is it
Well,
just,
I know
or
the
is
last,
it, or is it just, wait a minute, let me finish.
sorry,
Or is it just this year that you're saying there's 19 stalls?
I'm quite confident. I'd say the last 2 cycles.
Did
I
you
have my
s-
file here if you want. I can-
No, I'm asking you, you swore, so I'm asking you
The last 2 cycles,
that you said there was 19 stalls.
yes.
And going back to the last page of this picture, can you just so that I'm clear, you got these dotted lines, and those represent the easement that you're talking about?
Yes,
And then outside that line, you got a white car.
well, that's the driveway coming in. That's me, I think that's the driveway coming in.
Is that not a parked car?
What's sitting there right now, but it's not, shouldn't be there, because people won't be able to get in and out of it. It shouldn't be there. It's in the driveway, basically.
Well,
There's,
it looks to me like that's, I was wondering if that is the different stalls that we're talking about. But,
no,
but that's parked there. I mean, I don't think anyone would park in front so that you couldn't get into the lot.
well, they're squeezing through, they're not supposed to be. If someone's parking there, they're not supposed to be parking there. Basically, in my unit count, now I look at it, we have 9 stalls on the right-hand side. And I'm saying you're picking up 1 additional stall opposite, so you got 10 on the other side, that's how I come up with 19. So that means there's 2 stalls down at the bottom within that easement there, and I'm saying that shouldn't be in the count.
So there you got number 1, the blue car,
Yes,
and then you got this space from there. Shouldn't there be a stall there?
no, you see the curb cut there. So the blue car is right to the west of the curb cut. And there's a ticket splitter right there. You come in. So there's like a legally speaking, there's a 16-foot back lane here, which is a private back lane that's to the benefit of these properties.
Okay, that's all my questions.
Are there any questions?
Yes, Mr. Badger? Sorry, but I'm still somewhat confused. I'm looking at this picture you provided. So are you saying the parking stalls would be ending here with that blue car?
No, actually, can I get up, sorry?
Sure.
Sorry. That's this picture here. You look at this car and this car, this parking, it'd be here and here.
I see.
Okay.
Okay.
So if you have 9 here, you got 9 here plus 1, that's how I came up with 19.
Okay, and this is the easement that you're talking about?
There's an easement here, plus there's an easement here. But this is the most important one, because it brings in beer shipments and everything. So we wouldn't be able to get a beer truck through there.
Okay, sorry, and I just want to clarify, because I'm looking at this, there isn't an access going this way, or like these two buildings are joined, do you know what I'm saying, in the corner? It's a little hard to tell.
Yeah, I'm sorry, what you can't see here, you see this guy walked out of
Yeah.
the door there?
Yeah,
There's a beer chute here where they drop beer down.
okay,
And so there's another loading dock right here for this guy here.
okay.
So it's loading both buildings, so it loads here and it loads here.
Just, so, I'm sorry, you said this is the owner parking here?
No, well, the owner of the, or people who work in the hotel, they utilize the, you know, because they can, you know, it's not the owner of the property, you know, and they're not collecting money.
Okay,
It's the guy who operates the hotel that has
Okay.
the benefit of this easement
okay,
is parking here from time to time.
okay.
Mr. Chairman, I have
That's all my
a
questions.
redirect
Well,
based
hang
on
on,
that line of
wait till we
questioning.
finish
Okay.
questioning and I'll let you do that.
Okay.
That's all my questions, thank you.
So, Mr. Badger, if you can come here again, because I still want some clarification. So we have this easement over here that allows access, I guess, into the whole lot, right? So this white card here is part, that's blocking, but you have a curb cut here, so really,
Here's the curb cut.
yeah, absolutely. So the fact that this white car is here doesn't mean that the lot's inaccessible, correct?
That's right.
It's
Because
because
you
it's,
said it was blocked because of that guy in there.
Well, if a beer truck came in here, I don't know if they could get through, but sure, another car can get
well,
through.
we don't know
there.
if it can or not, because we
But
don't
you
know how
shouldn't,
wide.
you can't be parking on here because this has an easement, so the owner of this property cannot park cars.
Okay, I'm not saying you're getting revenue from this, but I'm just
Yeah.
asking, so, but since you have that, why doesn't the owner make an application to have the curb cut reduced, because you already have the benefit of the easement that can get you into the lot?
Well, I think they need about, a standard back name would be 20 feet, not 18. And you need a
Okay.
machine, for people to walk up to,
Okay, next question. This property though, this whole easement is owned by this lot, correct? In the subsidy, this whole piece of property is on this title,
yes.
okay? And the easement is to get into the lot and to give, where that's,
This easement I'm talking about, there's an easement for the benefit of this property, and
Okay.
this property to have access. Plus,
Right.
the owner does get to use it, yes.
yeah. Okay, so that gives access, but they could get access, no, it doesn't matter. Why is there a spot over here? See what I'm pointing?
Parking spot?
Yeah,
Or, you know, there's the picture, you'll see there's 2 cars parked here.
2 cars parked there? Those are the 2?
Yeah.
Okay. And you're saying that your owner doesn't get the revenue from them?
No.
Why? The easement shouldn't affect, it doesn't give, there's no requirement for access, there's no doors or anything yet.
Yes, there is.
Where?
There's a loading door, people come out.
There's a loading door
There's a
here?
door here, and there's loading doors here and here. And plus there's an exit here.
Okay, I see the exit there.
People, there's a fire, they have to run out. They shouldn't be allowing these guys. to
Anyway,
park there.
you know, the question is whether there's 20 or 19 stalls, and hopefully that'll get clarified by Ms. Wareham, so, thank you. Okay, if you have anything further to
I
ask.
just have a question based on the commentary of the 2 stalls and the photos. So the photo Mr. Badger provided, you provided this photo. Do you see these air conditioner units, whatever these are
Yes.
right here?
Yes.
If you actually look at your photo, one of them is on the inside of your dotted line. Okay? Would you agree that if you look at your aerial photo, one of those units is on the inside of your dotted line. Like the inside of the lot, not the easement portion. Would you agree with that?
I don't know, it's just,
I wanna see this.
Yeah.
So, do you agree that this unit is on the inside of your dotted line in your photograph, correct?
what's it with unit?
This white thing is that. Would you agree with that?
I can't tell.
Okay.
But it might be.
So, the point I'm saying, if you would agree that that unit is on the inside, then technically, your easement line is here, which is in line with that yellow line in the photo that says a car can park there. And there is no parking in front of the door. We do
First-
not include that
first of all-
stall in our assessment.
Parking stalls,
Okay,
a stall is supposed to be 8 feet, okay, wide. If it's the end stall, it's supposed to be 10. There's
okay.
2 stalls there, so 2 stalls, let's say they're 8, that's 16 feet, 18 feet. So that takes up 2 spots there where those guys are parking.
And then the next question was, Mr. Badger, you indicated a number of times that these are loading doors for a beer chute. Would you not agree that this door right here is the door to the hair salon that used to be called Burns and Black? And you had indicated there's a beer chute there, that a beer truck goes into the parking lot and loads it. But the beer chute, would you not agree, is actually on Main Street on the sidewalk? And the beer truck parks on Main Street in front of the entrance. And the beer chute itself is in the sidewalk, and you can see them in the daytime
Okay,
loading the beer down in the front street.
If you say so.
Oh, so you're not actually sure, just because
Well,
I'm clarifying
all
that
I
you said
know
there
is-
was a beer chute in this parking lot.
There's an easement, legal easement in place, it's on the title of the property lot that prohibits the owner, he has to allow an 18-foot strip of land, the benefit of that property there for people to use, to load, for a fire exit, and whatever.
I understand, but my question is, so you're not sure if there's a beer chute or not in the parking lot?
I'm not 100% certain if there's a beer chute in the parking lot,
Okay.
not on the side of the building there to drop it down.
Okay. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you.
I appreciate the opportunity.
Okay, the questions have all been asked, so you can now go through your evidence, Peter.
Perfect. All right, so this property that we've been discussing, as we've talked about, we're recommending to reduce the 2020 assessed value from $644,000 to $552,000. As Mr. Badger stated, what happens with our properties for parking, or any property type for that matter, is we develop models for all of our income producing properties, whether they be multifamily, parking, office, but we also develop land models for our vacant land. And the way our system works is whatever value ends up being higher gets placed on the property. So that's what's happened in this case with this property in 2018 and again in 2020. I represented the city of Winnipeg on this property in 2018, and I appreciate Mr. Badger and all the information that he's given us with the easements in respect to all of the usable areas and the limited development potential of the property, which we as the city has taken into account, which is why I've come into before this board the past 2 cycles to make a recommendation. Because that $644,000, based on the limitations of the property, the land value that gets applied by our model, when you look at the site specifically and look at land sales in comparison, the subject property isn't probably performing as well as some of our land sales, which is why then I look at the income approach, because that is a very supportable value. This is a property that's managed by a parking management company. So that's what we have done. We have already taken into account the limitations of this property. And in 2018, I made a recommendation to our modeled income approach with our modeled income per stall rate as well as the modeled cap rate, which the board at the time accepted. With respect to the stall count, I have inspected this property a number of times for the appeal. I inspected on January 3rd, 2018, and I confirmed the stall count then for the appeal last cycle. Again, I inspected this property on, just one moment, October 4th at around 11:15 in the morning, 11:11 a.m. to be exact. And this is just my personal notes, but if you look at the property and you turn to my page 2, you'll see an aerial photo of this property. And along, right here, where the roll number is the entrance to the parking lot. And that entrance is in the dotted line that Mr. Badger referred to as the easement that he's referring to. There's absolutely no beer chute there. They do not deliver beer in that area of the parking lot. I will agree there is an entrance to the hotel from those doors, and there are no parking signs there. They say no parking. I have, in the past year, personally parked in this parking lot about 10 times in the daytime to come to the office. And cars aren't supposed to park there. Sometimes there are cars there, sometimes there aren't. I can't speak to whether it's the hotel or people parking there and paying. That's besides the point. Along this line, along the street on Bannatyne, there are 9 stalls. There are lines on the ground, there are lines on the fence, and there are bumpers that show clearly where the stalls are. Along this wall, there, if you include the one in front of the door, there are 12 stalls. We do not assess that one in front of the door. There are 12 stalls can park in that lot, but we do not assess it because it is in front of the door and it's not supposed to be a parking stall. If you look at Mr. Badger's photo, there is a yellow line here, and I have inspected this property, like I've said, a number of times. They have lines painted on the wall of the building and bumpers showing where the stalls are. And there are 11 that we assess on this side, which total 20. My recommendation last cycle was also based on 20 stalls because of our inspection. So it's our belief that there are 20 stalls here, and like I said, I have been in this lot, sometimes cars are parked there. I can't speak to whether or not it's someone who shouldn't be parked there, or someone who's just dropping something off and loading. I can't speak to that, but I do know there are 21 stalls that can park in the lot, not including along the building because there are doors there. And you'll notice in his picture, it says no parking on that wall. So people don't actually park there. It says no parking in the stall in front of the door. So we're quite confident that of the 21 stalls, our assessment of the 20 is accurate and correct. Also, if you go to page 15 of my brief, these are the indigo details. They are the people that manage the lot. It also says number of spaces, 20 stalls. So that's our argument on the stall count. If we're looking back at page 2, you'll see the aerial photo of the subject property on the corner of Bannatyne and Albert Street, as previously mentioned. On page 3, you'll see subject property photos. On page 4, you'll see the request for income and expense information, and we have not received a response for our last 2. And on page 5, you'll see the income valuation summary, and this is for my recommendation that I'm making. We have 20 stalls at our modeled net unit rent of $103.50 a stall. Now, for parking, the city of Winnipeg, the way we do our parking is we model net parking rates. So when we get income and expense mailers back, we work right from the net operating income. Parking is such a varied thing in the city of Winnipeg. There's a number of management agreements. There are parking lots that offer casual parking. There's parking lots that offer parking to just tenants of a building. There's so many different variables within parking that we can't break it down to model this type of parking lot is this type of parking lot is that. So what we do is we work with all of our surface parking lots and we separate them into sort of the 3 tiers of our parking model. And we have what's the main downtown, which is our inner downtown. We have what's we call as the outer downtown, which is sort of the outskirts, like by the UW, over here in Chinatown. And then that includes the hospitals, and then we also have our suburban area. So our for our parking for 20, this property is in the inner downtown, and it ranges, our model ranges from $63 a stall to $117. And so what we've done is we've taken the income and expense mailers of all the parking lots that we get mailers back from in that area. We take the net operating income on those mailers that's reported, we divide it by the stall count, divide it by 12 to come up with a per stall rate. And then those per stall rates are then modeled to come up with these monthly net unit rents. So the annual net rent on this property is $24,840. We have a cap rate that we have as part of our model for 2020 as 4.5%. And our total value after the cap rate is applied is $552,000. On the bottom of my page 5, you'll see comparables. These are information, this is information that's come directly from mailers submitted to our department. So these are a number of properties that are all within blocks of the subject property. We have 14 comparables here. We have a number on Bannatyne and McDermott, and they range from $90.01 to $300.74. All of these properties are within a very short walk. A number of these properties are on the docket today, and I was able to inspect the whole docket today within about an hour. That's how close all of the properties are. On page 6, you'll see the income valuation summary. On page 7, you'll see cap rate information. The City of Winnipeg models their cap rates and comes up with their model cap rates based on reconstructed net operating incomes applied against time-adjusted sale prices. And the information here are information on a number of property types, office, industrial, retail, multifamily, that shows where the City of Winnipeg lows and highs from the model are, the 20th and 80th percentiles as well. And then we compare what we've come up with our modeled cap rates to what's been presented by a number of outside sources, similar to other companies that do cap rate analysis and things like that, to show that we're in line. In addition, if you turn to page 18 of my brief, the city has gone a step further to try to provide more information when talking about our cap rates. So this is a sample of actual sales that have been vetted by our department and investigated. They've been researched to be bona fide arm's length transactions of a number of property types. So in addition to modeled information and outside sources, we also have cap rate evidence for a number of office properties, retail, multifamily, and industrial. You'll notice that the office sales that we've presented here range from 5.1% upwards of 6.35. For retail, we have a range from 3.1 to 7.4. Multifamily, we have a range from 4.03 upwards of 5. And for industrial, we have a range of 4.97 upwards of 8%. The logic that we have at the City of Winnipeg with respect to parking lots, it's difficult to find parking lot sales and match income to it to come up with sales. To come up with cap rates with actual sales. So in addition to looking at those, when you also have to keep in mind the motivations of the sales of downtown parking lots and why they've been purchased and what they've done after, have they been redeveloped, have they been kept as parking, it's important to keep in mind those limitations when looking at actual cap rates. So we take it a step further when looking at parking. Parking is essentially an interim use. It's a piece of vacant land that gets an income until such a time that someone wants to sell it or redevelop it. Also, there are some parking lots that are going to be kept for the foreseeable future as parking. But what we look at is the return on investment and the risk involved in having a downtown parking lot that doesn't have capital costs, that doesn't have advertising or a number of things that need to be involved with it. You're not repairing buildings, you don't have a new roof to put on or a new HVAC system, so the capital costs involved in a parking lot, which is essentially vacant land that doesn't have a cap rate. It doesn't make sense for a multifamily apartment building to have a 5% cap rate and a parking lot to have something higher. That just logically to the City of Winnipeg does not make sense. It's essentially an interim use as a piece of vacant land, so we're confident that our 4.5% makes sense and has been applied for the parking lot that we're talking about here today. If you look on the last page of our brief, or on page 15, I should say, these are the Indigo details. This is the parking management company that offer the hourly and daily rates. The hourly rate is $4 an hour and the daily max is $13.50. So again, I'm recommending that the property value be reduced for 2020 from $644,000 to $552,000. That's my presentation. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Thank you. Mr. Badger, any questions of the assessor?
Yes. The assessed value, the use has to be legal and permitted, right? That's a fundamental of an assessment in determining the values.
There are legal and permitted uses, and there are current uses that are also happening here. So when we're looking at an assessed value, we have to look at what is currently happening, is it legally permissible? It's not an illegal parking lot, it's a legal non-conforming parking lot. It doesn't conform to the current zoning bylaws, but when it was created, it did conform, so it's a legal non-conforming use.
The, if a potential buyer came here, and if he was to look, I was talking about the stall, I'm getting back to the stall count, but, if there was an easement that affected his ability to, park cars on, do you think you would take that into account?
Mr. Chairman, if a buyer did come along and look at,
Look, hang on, the stall count is pertinent, okay, so
Yeah.
if there's an easement that doesn't allow.
and
there's
I'm
no-
answering, no,
and-
I'm answering that question.
Okay, and well, hang on, there's 20 stalls there. So if the easement is reduced to 20 stalls, you've already got that
No,
baked into the buy.
I still disagree in the stall count,
Well-
my next question is gonna get to it.
Okay, ask your next question then.
Okay, I'll just, do you mind if I stand up? I just wanna show you your drawing. You said there was 9 stalls on the north side, right? Now look at your picture.
Yes,
So if we draw a straight line across, there should be 9 stalls here, right?
where?
There's 9 stalls here. That's what you said in your evidence.
Yes,
So if you mirror image that, there's 9 stalls here to this line here.
but you're now drawing a line from the curb cut. Your
No,
line.
I'm drawing it from this car here.
Yes, so you're drawing a line from the inside car, your line that you presented as
That's
part of
right.
your evidence.
No, I agree, that's right, but I'm saying there's 9 stalls here. I'm just basically saying, the mirror image of this here, there's 9 stalls here, then there's 3 stalls. Okay,
Okay,
okay, so what I'm saying is 2 of the, 9, 3, that's 12 and 9 is 21. I'm just saying you can't use these 2 stalls because they fall.
Mr.
into the
Badger?
easement.
You know, there's a letter here that the city's provided from the management company that says there's 20 stalls there.
He doesn't know.
He doesn't know, he should know,
Well,
he's the one who's
I
managing
agree with you,
it.
but I'm saying, just because he's saying you can park so it doesn't mean he's legally entitled to park a stall there. I'm saying, the owner from the hotel can come out one day and say, I don't want, you have an argument over a garbage or something like that, the guy's gonna say, that easement's mine, you can't do it.
Well, we don't have a
I've had,
hotel.
I'm over on Rosner Road, I've had the neighborhood sue me, told me to move
Okay, well,
6
that's-
garages out of the way, just because there's an easement in place.
Go ahead, ask your question.
So legally, there's an agreement in place that restricts the use of that
Okay,
property.
ask your question.
That's good. So my question is 9 here, there's 9 here, right?
I don't agree with the way you've drawn your lines. Your lines that you're drawing on that picture are significantly over from your lines that you've presented as part of your exhibit of where the lines are. If you compare your 2 pictures, you've now just drawn a line and hived off wherever you kind of want in that.
No,
You haven't-
No, so here it is here, so this is this extra stall, there's 9, 18 plus the 1 over, I would agree with you.
Mr. Badger, this is the first stall. Look, 1, 2, 3, you have them labeled in your brief. You
Yes.
have, that's not a stall there. You don't even have it labeled as a stall. So I'm not sure what you're trying to argue at this point.
I'm saying, there's 9 here, 9 and 9 is 18, and there's 1 stall here.
Okay, you know what, Mr. Badger,
Okay.
it's just not gonna agree with you, so
Okay.
you've asked your question.
I do feel I've answered the question. Thank you.
Do you have any other questions?
Yes?
Yeah.
You specified, page 18, you gave a listing of capitalization rates and how the city defends the capitalization rate. Page 18, is there any parking lots in there?
There are not. These are presented as supplementary evidence to support, to say, look, our model cap rates are in line.
What, is there any rates here? There's one rate out of, I don't know, what, 15 different comparisons here that's below 4.5. How do you draw a conclusion out of that?
Can you repeat, what do you?
I think what he's asking you is, there's nothing there that concretely says that it should be assessed at 4.5, or that it should be a cap rate of 4.5%. How do you draw that conclusion?
I believe I answered that in my presentation, Mr. Chairman, but
Yeah, I
I
know,
can
I think you
repeat
did too, but he's
Um,
asking you the question, so see if you can answer it again.
Mr. Chairman, so again, when we look at all of the property types that are on page 18, these are sales that are arm's length bona fide transactions. They have been reviewed for 3 years of income. They have developed a stabilized net operating income to come up with the cap rate for a time-adjusted sale. We have followed correct appraisal theory when developing these cap rates, and they have been presented here today to show these are actual cap rate sales for improved property types. And the logic we have is a parking lot is a piece of vacant land without the risk of an improved property. There are less capital costs involved. I'm not saying there aren't any. There are less capital costs involved. We have applied a cap rate, which makes sense. It's a piece of vacant property that doesn't have a cap rate, but there is risk involved in parking. There are limits to development potential of smaller parking lots. So our logic is when you have improved properties sitting at around 5%, it wouldn't make sense to have a parking lot be at 5 or 6%. One would assume that looking at it with sort of a reasonable appraiser test and looking at the information you have, the parking lot cap rate would be lower, and that's our position.
Okay, I've got one more question, I'm sorry.
No, ask your question, go ahead.
You did say when you went through your brief on capitalization rates, that you came up with a capitalization rate for this one downtown sector of 4.5%. But you also, that's a general rate for all the parking lots in there. I also believe, I heard you say that you take a look at the future potential, development potential of a site. So is there future development problems with this site?
I think to clarify, Mr. Chairman, I had indicated that when looking at land sales, you have to look at the development potential based on the sales that you have in your subject property. Also, when you're looking at developing cap rates based on parking lot sales, you have to be wary when you're looking at the cap rate that's produced, is if you're looking at a parking lot that's sold that was immediately turned into a building, clearly that person purchased that property to develop it, and it would be difficult to develop a cap rate based on the income of a parking lot that was purchased to build a building on. So essentially, that was my commentary on the development potential. And with respect to the subject property and the limited development potential on it, we've acknowledged that. And I believe we've acknowledged that with the recommendation that we've made here today, as well, that was in line with the recommendation that was made in 2018.
So the 4.5 blended rate downtown, all those lots come up to 4.5, have
That-
development issues in. Is that what you're saying then?
No,
Well, you're treating this as the same as every other lot downtown.
we have a model, Mr.
Yeah.
Chairman, that we have to follow, and that is the cap rate that was applied to our downtown properties.
Okay, that answers my questions then.
Thank you. Ms. Miller, any questions of the assessor?
I do. Sorry, I'm going to go back to the cap rate. So page 18 of your cap rate evidence, there are no parking lots, correct?
There are,
Okay. Page 7,
yep,
your cap rate study, there are no parking lots.
there are no parking lots, that is correct. When you look at outside sources, no one develops a parking lot study based, or a cap rate study based on parking lots. What we've done is we've taken the properties that are analyzed by outside companies, and we've taken our same property types and applied it against that.
But properties, not parking lots.
Yes, those are property types.
So previous assessment in 2018, you reduced, and sorry, just to clarify, it was your decision, your reduction?
My recommendation, yes.
Right, for 497, correct?
Yes,
Okay. In 2018?
yes.
Okay. And do you recall what the cap rate was then?
The cap rate was the modeled cap rate for 2018,
Which was?
5%.
Okay.
So 5% was applied to all of our downtown parking lots in 2018.
Right.
And we applied our modeled cap rate based on all of the other information. And again, we're doing the same thing, it's a new reassessment, and we're applying our modeled cap rate for the 2020 reassessment to this property.
Which is
4.5%.
So you have applied you've reduced, or it's gone up from 5 to 4.5 for this assessment year. Sorry, and you're still not providing any sales. You're basing your cap rate on parking lots on buildings, correct?
The city of Winnipeg has reviewed cap rates for parking lots. What is presented here today is what we present to all of our hearings for cap rate information on all property types. All property types get presented this information.
Correct.
And we have presented that, we have presented our logic and our information and how we have arrived at that. And that's pretty much all I can say on that. I feel I've answered it pretty lengthily.
That's all my questions, thank you.
So Luke, any questions of the assessor?
Not of the assessor, no.
So basically, I see that the city hasn't got a model cap rate for parking lots, and it's a difficult one to do, I suppose, but, because I suppose if a property has development potential, a purchaser, even though they might not develop it for years, might be happy with a very small cap rate because they know that they're getting a return in the meantime while they wait, and the potential's still there. So if you use that rate, you might end up getting, you might sell at a 2% or 1% cap rate because that potential, since it's a difficult thing to do.
When we've looked at the cap rate sales, and again, like I said, you have to be careful when you're looking at the cap rates. When you look at the income on a parking lot and then look at the sale, you have to take into account what has transpired. So for example, if you're looking at the income on a property that is for a parking lot and then it was sold and it was redeveloped, the parking lot cap rates that we find in that situation, albeit a sale that was purchased for development, are very, very low.
Yeah.
They're in the 1% range. And then when you have parking lots that sell as ancillary uses, their cap rates are higher. So what we have to do as the city of Winnipeg, because we're in mass appraisal, we have to look at the lows and the highs, similar to our net operating incomes. We have lower rates that some parking lots get and higher ones, but we're doing mass appraisal, so we have to come up with what's in the middle. So some parking lots may have more issues, some have others, but our model cap rate is 4.5%.
I
And we
understand that.
feel that that's taken into account, that you would have a much lower cap rate on something that you're
Now,
gonna
I
be able to
understand that, but this leads
develop.
to my next question. Are there any sales, or were there any sales of parking lots in Winnipeg in the specified period of parking lots that did not have development or redevelopment potential?
There have been a couple parking lot sales that have transpired that have not been developed and that have continued to.
I'm saying that they don't have no development, redevelopment potential though.
There have been, yeah.
And
I think that it's limited.
Yeah, so you haven't provided those cap rates to us though.
We have not.
Are you aware of what they are?
Am I aware of what the cap rates are?
Yes.
The limitations on, the problem is when owners don't respond to our sales mailers or income and expense questionnaires, and we can't get 3 years of income from an owner to stabilize for the sales, it makes it hard, because a perfect situation needs to have a sale of a property, and then all our owners need to respond on the income. So when there are people who aren't responding, it makes it a little bit more difficult for us. And so we have not presented that information here today. We have the information that we've presented, and like I said, we were confident with our 5% in 2018, we're confident with our 4.5 in 2020.
Thank you. Okay, we've heard all our evidence. You know, I will give both parties opportunity of doing a last submission if they wish to do so. It's not necessary, I think we've heard it all, but I'm not gonna preclude you from doing so if you wish to.
That's okay.
Okay, so you'll hear from us.
I'll just hand this to the secretary out in front.
The file? Yes, if you could just fill it out and
Yeah.
sign it, and you can give it to her.
Thanks, Em.
Morning.
You have the option to swear in on it. Please state your full name.
Marcelo Navarro.
Do you swear the evidence you're about to present is the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth, so help you God? Thank you.
My name is Navarro.
Good day.
Okay, well, let's proceed with 127 Bannatyne. And when you're ready, Ms. Quinn?
Thank you. So we're looking at file number 19-3177. The roll number is 13062824000. The address is 127 Bannatyne Avenue. I'm recommending to reduce the 2020 assessed value from $1,132,000 to $1,104,000. This is a surface parking lot that has 40 stalls. I inspected this property on October 4th at 11:35 a.m. and I have inspected it previously as well. This property has a land area of 12,637 square feet, and like I said, it has 40 parking stalls. 26 of those stalls have plugs, 14 of those stalls do not. If you turn to page 2 of my brief, you'll see aerial photos of the subject property showing its location on the north side of Bannatyne Avenue between Rory Street and Waterfront Drive. It actually sits between Bannatyne and John Hirsch Place. If you turn to page 3, you'll see subject property photos. On page 4, you'll see requests for income and expense information. And on page 5, you'll see our income valuation summary. We have 40 stalls at our modeled monthly net unit rent of $103.50 a stall. Like I said before, our model for this area is $63 to $117 a stall. It comes out with an annual net rent of $49,680. With a 4.5% cap rate, the value is $1,104,000. On the bottom of my page 5, you'll see the comparables. They range from $90.01 to $300.74. If you look on number 9, the comparable number 9 is the subject property at 127 Bannatyne. It has a 41% expense ratio. Typical expense ratios for 2020 from our model is about 45%. They charge $185 a stall, and it nets out to being $146.88 a stall versus our model of $103.50. On page 7, you'll see cap rate information. Again, like I mentioned, it shows the City of Winnipeg lows and highs for a number of property types. It shows the 20th and 80th percentiles and where most of those modeled cap rates sit for those property types. And again, the reason these property types have been chosen is because those are the property types that other companies develop cap rates on. On page 8, you'll see Municipal Assessment Act information, and on page 9, you'll see the income and expense mailer. If you turn to page 13, you'll see that they have 40 stalls available for $4 a flat evening and weekend only rate. They have public parking with monthly use for 40 stalls at $185 a stall. On page 14, you'll see the income and expense mailer that was submitted showing their gross income as well as their net operating income, which again, like I said, if you look at page 5, works out to being $146.88 a stall. On page 15, you'll see the information from Impark, 127 Bannatyne Avenue, lot number 165. You'll see there's a little picture of a plug. It also says there's plugs here, but like I said, there are not plugs in all the stalls. It has random 24/7 parking at $185 a stall, and at the reference date, there was a wait list for people to park there. On page 16, again, you'll see the Impark details. They show $4 an hour, or $4 for evening and weekend. It's a max until 6 a.m., and it says that it is a paved surface parking lot. On page 17, you'll see our City of Winnipeg addenda. On page 19, you see the cap rate information. Again, these are actual sales and cap rates that have been developed using stabilized actual income, so that is reported from properties against sale prices of that same property. Because to develop a cap rate, you must look at actual income and apply it against actual sale prices. So we've also used that as a supplementary to the information we've provided. That's my presentation, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you. Mr. Vero, any questions to the assessor? Mr. Flynn, if you have any questions of
No, I don't.
Mr. Ledbetter, any questions?
No, I'm assuming you're not accepting the,
No, I actually am accepting,
Oh, you're accepting the rec?
yeah. I'm actually accepting all of these recommendations.
Okay, we can go through them very quickly then. Sorry, okay, so,
If you're curious as to my reasoning,
I don't need your reasoning, I think this is
I
Matt.
can't quite hear you,
Oh,
sir. Could you speak
actually,
louder?
I would like to hear his reasoning, because,
Okay.
sorry, your request was,
it's particular to the Exchange District, so this is why I'm accepting it.
Okay.
As we move forward, you're gonna see different cap rates for properties in different areas.
Well, I certainly saw that your NOI was higher than the model, so,
Yeah,
you know, I think that
yeah, it's,
you can do a lot of cap rate alterations, they'll not get to that.
it's, yeah, I don't have an issue with these values in the Exchange District.
can I ask you a question?
Go ahead.
So you're accepting the city's cap rate at 4.5 on
Not
this?
accepting the net value.
Okay.
So, I don't think I need to get into that, but
Okay, no, just.
No, I think I
ask
see
and
it,
answer.
I see that your NOI is a lot higher, so
Yeah.
that
it's not,
you know.
not really based on an NOI.
No, I'm saying though, that
Yes.
based on the way
Yeah.
the slot's producing,
Yeah.
yeah, okay. Okay, well, next move on then to item number 4 on the agenda, which is 170 Valentine. And again, you can take us through it very, very quickly on the basis of knowing that your recommendations and all have been accepted by the applicants.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. This is file number 19-3182. The roll number is 13-060-747-000. The address is 170 Bannatyne Avenue. This is a surface parking lot located on the south side of Bannatyne Avenue between Main Street and Rory Street. You'll see an aerial photo on page 2 of my brief. This is behind the building at 433 Main Street, which is the passport office, if we're familiar with that building. This has 32 parking stalls, they have plugs, and I'm recommending to reduce the 2020 assessed value from $983,000 to $883,000. If you turn to page 3 of my brief, you'll see subject property photos. On page 4, you'll see income and expense information. On page 5, you'll see our income valuation summary. This is our modeled income with a stall count of 32 stalls with a monthly net unit rent of $103.50 a stall, for an annual net rent of $39,744 with a cap rate of 4.5%. The comparables on the bottom of page 5, they are all within the subject property. As I said, a number of them are on Bannatyne Avenue and McDermott within minutes of the subject property. They range from $90.01 to $300.74. The subject property is comparable number 8. They have 32 stalls, they have a 56% expense ratio, they have a monthly per stall rate of $205, and they're reporting a net of $92.84. We believe that's a little bit low for the area, but I can get into that when we look at the income and expense mailer. On page 7, you'll see cap rate information. Again, the City of Winnipeg modeled cap rates applied again, compared against outside source information. If you look at page 9, this is the income and expense mailer that is submitted from the property owner, and on page 13, you'll see the rates that they charge. So they have 30 stalls available. They're reporting that can garner an evening and weekend flat rate of $6 a stall. So they only offer 30 of those, which means they've chosen to have 2 stalls available 24/7 to the tenants of their building. They also indicate that they have tenant parking stalls with an additional charge to the person leasing. So 26 of those stalls, they charge $205 a stall. And then also they have tenant parking stalls with additional charge to the lease. So some of the income from these stalls is going to the lease inside the building, which explains why the net rate is a little bit lower than some of the comparables, because they've chosen to make some business decisions in these lots and not offer them available to the public. Then if you look at page 14, it's the income and expense mailer that's submitted, and like I said, if you look at page 5, it works out to $92.84 a stall. On page 15 is the in-park details, showing that there are plugs here, which I did confirm on the inspection. They have random parking from 7 AM till 6 PM for $205 a month, and at the reference date, there was a wait list. On page 16 is the in-park details. Again, it shows that they charge $6 for evening max until 6 AM and $205. They indicate that there are 32 stalls here and that this is a paved surface parking lot. I made my recommendation actually to correct the stall count, so that is why I've made that recommendation from 938 to 883, was to reduce the stall count from 34 stalls to 32 because of what I discovered in the inspection.
Thank you. Any questions? Mr. Flug? You
No,
know,
thanks.
Ms. Lindberg, any questions?
No.
And I don't either. Thank you. And this will deal with 38 Albert.
Mr. Chairman, just,
You did, so,
Okay.
would it be okay if we talk about, if Mr. Navarro's okay with this, if we talk about 38 Albert and 241 Notre Dame together? They're two different roll numbers, but they're essentially the same parking lot. They're just on two different roll numbers because they have two.
I'm certain that Mr. Navarro won't mind because he's accepting the recommendations, so.
Just because they're in a different order, so.
Break for 5 minutes.
Okay, we need to take a break for 5 minutes. Okay, we're back. And again, we know that Mr. Navarro's accepted your recommendations on everyone, so he can go through this very quickly. We just want to see the rationale for why you've made the recommendation.
I pretty much go until he says I accept it, or you guys say, that's good.
Yeah.
So.
Well, yeah, I just, I don't mind listening to you, but, basically, we just have to know the rationale why
Yeah.
the recommendation's been made, and then we have to agree
Yeah,
that we're gonna endorse it.
my apologies, Mr. Chairman. When
No,
I
don't
get to the part where I
apologize.
say my recommendation, no one accepts it like verbally in the hearing, and I kind of have to hear it, otherwise I have to keep going.
Yeah, although Mr.
So-
Navarro did make a blanket acknowledgement before.
I know, but similar how we have to say each file, that's kind of why I was doing it, so
Okay,
after I present my
I
recommendation,
can
if you
indicate
want to
as
say, do you
sharing this, I
accept?
consider that they've all been accepted, and Mr. Navarro will speak up if he doesn't,
Perfect.
okay?
All right, we're looking at file number 19-4629. This is 38 Albert Street at roll number 13060020000. This is a surface parking lot with no plugs located on the west side of Albert Street between Notre Dame Avenue and McDermott Avenue. This was a property that defaulted to our land value, and if you look at the aerial photo on page 2, after a review of the land sales and what's happening here and the limited nature of this property with respect to its access, because it doesn't actually have street access. It's along Albert, but it doesn't have street access. You have to gain access to that parking lot via other properties. I didn't feel that our comparable land sales were justified, so I made a recommendation from the value that was produced by our land value to the income value of $607,000 based on our modeled income at 22 stalls for $103.50 a stall at a 4.5 cap rate for $607,000. And again, I inspected this property on October 4th at 11:17 a.m.
Thank you. Any questions on this matter? Panel members? Of the assessor?
I just have a question.
Go ahead.
On page 4, under the sale history, in July of 2011, it sold for $800,
Yep,
but now it's being valued at $607.
I believe that might have been a multi-roll sale with another property.
This is the property that's right behind the
The Royal Albert?
St. Albert, no,
The Royal Albert?
It's beside it, yes.
yeah. And I think that they were looking at potential development that didn't come to fruition.
Just one moment, please. Yeah, so it sold in 2011, but the fire happened in 2012, so I believe the sale was for the building, actually. Because the fire, they had to demolish, there was a fire on April 19th of 2012.
That was an old building that had a restaurant on Albert Street?
I believe it was War on Music was the building, so I believe that sale actually had the building, which is why it was 800,000. Now that I'm looking at the notes on the property, when it talks about the fire, we did a demolition permit, for the fire that was April 19th, 2012. So I believe, yes, that $800,000 was the building sale. It's been vacant since and used as a parking lot.
Sorry, so can I just ask, so there was a building here?
There was a building on that whole parcel.
Okay.
So if you look at my photos
Okay.
on this page,
Which page?
page 3. So I believe the building came up to the sidewalk right here, and I believe it came back not very far, because it was actually quite a small building. So it was only on part of the parking lot, so I believe the cars were able to park behind it, because previously we were assessing, I think, 16 stalls on this property, because we assessed for 16 stalls in addition to the building, because I had to adjust the stall count on this for previous appeal cycles, which is now at 22 stalls. If that clears some things up.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
Okay, thank you, I've got clarification now. Land value. Is it, so, just a question, so you, basically your recommendation is based on the land value and the land sales that,
No, my recommendation is based on an income valuation,
is?
our modeled income. It's on page 5.
okay.
If you want, I can go through it in more detail.
You know what, maybe in this case you should, because I was under the belief that you resorted to land value on this.
No, so what happened on this property is the original assessment of $798,000 was a land value, so similar to the property on Bannatyne, our system just defaults to whatever the higher of the two values are. Then when I got this under appeal, I did my due diligence of looking at the land sales that we have in the downtown, looking at how they compare to this property, and decided that the land sales that we have were probably a little bit superior, and then based on the access limitations of this property, it doesn't have street access. I felt that it was, based on the sales that we had, it might have been a little bit aggressive. So I made a recommendation to reduce the value to $607,000, which is our modeled approach based on the income of 22 stalls at $103.50 a stall at a 4.5% cap rate. And then what I did was I looked at that value on a per square foot rate and compared it against the land sales that we have, and thought that it made a lot more sense when looking at sales in the downtown. But I have presented market information for parking rates to defend the $607,000 that I've presented here today.
Okay. Thank you. Any questions for clarification, anybody clear?
No, not at all.
Good, thank you.
Thank you.
Now, Mr. Chairman, I know the next item on the docket is 211 McDermott, but can we skip to 241 Notre Dame, because it's essentially the same parking lot, like they're operated together
That's fine.
as 35 Albert? Okay.
Next, gonna deal with then with 241 Notre Dame Avenue.
Correct.
And is that the property that has an easement on it that allows access to the property we just dealt with?
I haven't actually done a
Okay.
title search on this property to know what sort of easements are in place on it. So the property we're looking at is 241 Notre Dame Avenue. It's located on the north side of Notre Dame between Arthur Street and Albert Street. It's very close to the corner of Portage and Main. So if you look at page 2, you'll see the aerial photo of the property. This is the subject that we're talking about now, and this is the 38 Albert attached to it. This is actually operated as one parking lot by Indigo. So we have 26 stalls on this parcel, and I'm recommending to reduce the 2020 assessed value from $770,000 to $718,000. Again, similar to 38 Albert, I looked at the value that was produced by our model, which is the land value. I looked at the rate that it was applied. I looked at the land sales to see where in line it was. And based on the more odd configuration of this lot, its location in comparison to some of the land sales, I felt that our modeled income approach to value, the value that is produced at $718,000, was more appropriate. And so again, I've defended that with market comparables. So per stall rates that have been reported on parking lots by owners. We have cap rate information on page 7. Again, these are modeled cap rates compared against cap rates that are reported from companies. On page 9, we have an income and expense mailer. This income and expense mailer actually was reported for both parking lots. It didn't say that it was reported for both parking lots, but because of my history with this property and who filled it out and the number of stalls they reported, I knew it was reported for both parking lots, because it actually is operated together by Indigo. And if you look on page 17, you'll see the information. It says the St. Charles Hotel, they charge $3 an hour, $12 a day, $4 for evening, $205 for monthly reserve parking, and if you want monthly evening parking, it's $40. So just a side note on the mailer, this showed up as not having a mailer returned on it. So we ask Mr. Navarro to ask his client in the future if you're going to submit a mailer for 2 properties that are the same use to indicate that they're used for that, because we didn't go for non-compliance at this time because I was familiar with the property and I knew that they had supplied the information to us, but we do need the owners to indicate on the mailer that they're supplying the information for both. When we're talking about substantial compliance and strict non-compliance and things like that, this is substantially compliant, but we do need owners to be very clear with the information that they're giving to us. Because if someone else had looked at this and wasn't as familiar, it may have looked as though this property was not compliant. We can clearly derive a per stall rate on this property because they have listed the 50 stalls. We know that it's for 2 lots and they have given us the information that we need. So I just wanted to clarify that we make sure that we're asking that of the owners.
Thank you.
That's 241 Notre Dame.
Great. Any questions of the assessor?
Not for me.
No?
No.
And I don't either, so we can go on with the property at 211 McDermott.
So we're looking at file number 19-3511, roll number 13060864000. The address is 211 McDermott Avenue. I'm recommending to reduce the 2020 assessed value from $1,174,000 to $936,000. Again, this property had defaulted to our land value, and after a review of the land sales and looking at the subject property, if you see on page 2, it has a great location. It's on the corner of McDermott and Main Street. It doesn't have Main Street access, it only has McDermott Street access. It is a very odd shaped parcel, and it has 11,662 square feet. So when looking at the land per square foot rate and then comparing it with some of our land sales, I did feel that it was a little bit inferior to some of the land sales that we had. Therefore, I felt the recommendation was appropriate. So I made the recommendation to $936,000 for 30 stalls, which I did count on October 4th at 11:25 a.m. And there are lines and signs. This was a very easy parking lot to count. I like parking lots that are really easy to count because it's very clear. So we have 30 stalls. We have applied a monthly net unit rent of $117 a stall. As I stated earlier, for this area of the downtown, our model applies $63 upwards of $117. This is a higher quality parking lot. It has Main Street visibility, McDermott visibility, and they do charge some very high rates here. This is one of the parking lots that we consider good quality. And so it's modeled, monthly net unit rent is $117 a stall. With our 4.5% cap rate, it's $936,000. And on a per square foot rate, that made more sense with the land sales that I was looking at as well. So I felt confident with looking at direct comparison sales as well as the income. If you look at the bottom of page 5, our income is $90.01 for our comparables to $300.74. As I stated previously, all of these properties are in close proximity to the subject. Some of them, most of them being inferior to the subject property. The one that's the most comparable is 416 Main Street. It is the gravel parking lot beside 201 Portage Avenue, which is just on the other side of McDermott, past the building from this parking lot. So 416 Main Street is our best comparable and most comparable to this property. And it's comparable number 13. Comparable number 3 is the subject property at 211 McDermott, and they're reporting that they make $113 a stall, $113.03 a stall. They charge from $210 to $285, and they have reported 30 stalls. Again, we have our cap rate information on page 7, and on page 9, you'll see the income expense mailer that's submitted to the city of Winnipeg by the owner. On page 13, you'll see the in-park details. They call this lot Main and McDermott. It's lot number 366. They have 4 different rates that they charge on this property. They have a $95 evening random rate from 6 p.m. to 6 a.m. that someone can rent to park at night. They have a random 7 a.m. to 6 p.m., which is their lowest rate for $210 a stall. They have a reserved 24/7 rate for $285 a stall, and then they also have a reserved 7 a.m. to 6 p.m. rate for $225 a stall. At the reference date, there was a wait list for all of those parking types to park in this lot. And then again, on page 14, it says its surface is paved, there are no plugs here, and it shows that they have casual parking, $3 an hour, $12 a day max until 6 p.m. It says 6 a.m., but usually daily rates are till 6 p.m. and then their nightly ones come in. And then an evening and weekend rate from 6 p.m. to 6 a.m. of a flat rate of $8.
Thank you. Any questions, Ms. Hood?
None for me, it was clear.
Mr. Navarro?
No questions.
I don't either. Thank you very much, Mr. Navarro.
No questions?
Yeah, and thank you for
Oh.
attendance. Okay, and we'll get our decisions very soon.
Thank you for your time.
Thank you.
Thank you, nice meeting you.